Present.
We might need to start again. I apologize. Councilmember Araya.
Here.
Councilmember McManus.
Here.
Councilmember Donahue.
Present.
Councilmember Shipman.
Present.
Councilmember Jorstad.
Here.
Councilmember Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Packard.
Here.
Here.
Looks like we have everybody here, which is wonderful. Could we get an approval of the agenda, Council President?
We can. Everyone has an agenda in front of them. Do I have any changes or additions or a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to move item F from the consent agenda. Is it the wrong time?
So we got to have a motion to pass the consent agenda first, and then you could include that in your motion, your discussion, or you can do an amendment to the original motion.
I'll make a motion to pass the agenda with the amendment to move item F from the consent agenda to the action items for discussion.
To action or discussion? Since it's on consent, it would have to be action.
Action sounds great.
All right, we have a motion, an amended motion. Do I have a second? Second. All right, any discussion?
I heard Councilmember Araya's voice, so.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you have an agenda.
Great, thank you. There's a little bit of harmony in that second. You guys should. Thinking about starting a band. All right, let's kick off some council or citizens comments. Let's do citizens comments. Is there anyone online who wishes to provide citizens comments to the council tonight?
Don't see any hands. So again, if you would like to speak to the city council tonight, raise your digital hand if you're on Zoom and I can let you into the meeting. No hands.
Great. And the only green sheet I have is from Bruce. Bruce, you have the floor.
Just Bruce Morton, on Vernon Road. Just happened to be here tonight for other reasons, but I've got a completely unrelated thing to talk about. Well, it actually is on tonight's agenda. It has to do with the new marina. A citizen has brought up to me some preliminary plans, which are not in the agenda packet, and showed drawings of it to me. And as an avid boater, immediately this is frankly ridiculous. If I could show this to you, you probably can't see it from here. It's ginormous. It's like there's enough spots for 20 boats out there. And the thing that's really the problem is for most boaters, especially inexperienced boaters, coming in and out of a boat launch, you want to go straight, going in and going out. And there is no straight way in or out of this boat launch. You have to go around the docks. And so that's going to cause a huge bottleneck. It's going to slow things down. Inexperienced boaters are going to really have a problem getting in and out of there. And the weird thing is, it kind of looks like a swastika. So I don't think you want to have that. But anyway, I think something more modest, if you want to replace the existing one, I think that's great. But I don't think we need to go full on, ginormous 20 boats. That's all I got. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Bruce. And I'll address this real quick. That is a design from someone who is putting in an RFP, just made it up. It's not a city thing. So that guy should probably chill on who he's giving his ideas.
Okay.
Sometimes it's fun to be the man. Great. Where are we at? Okay, council business.
Thank you. We'll start at the end. Councilman Packard.
Sure, I've got a fair amount today, but I'll try and be quick. I wanted to share that I did a ride along with the LSPD last week. Spent 4 or so hours with newly promoted Sergeant Fisk. I will just say that it was eye-opening. I don't have a lot of experience with police department or what policing looks like, but it was highly educational. I would highly recommend the rest of the council take advantage of an opportunity. Biggest thing I would just say is it's clear that Sergeant Fisk and the rest of the PD hopefully are engaged in proactive policing, right? They're not just sitting around waiting for things to happen. I was amazed at the things that Sergeant Fisk saw and responded to quicker than I could even process what was happening. And sure, that's his full-time job, but I'll just say I was impressed. And if the rest of the PD is like him, then we're in a good shape. I participated in the SCCT annual meeting a couple weeks ago. They were doing, voting for different positions and things like that. I would just say, yeah, I had the opportunity to meet council members from Monroe, Snohomish, Marysville, and build some relationships there. So that was really valuable and helpful. I spent 2 days last week in Olympia at the AWC Action Days. So there were some really great workshops around advocacy with state legislatures, updates on the legislative priorities, et cetera, et cetera. And then Thursday, we had the opportunity to engage with Senator Wagner and then our representatives Lowe and Eslick and talk to them about things that are important to us and get a good understanding of what's going on down there. So I was there with Councilmember McManus, Jean and Brett, and it was a great opportunity. I learned a lot. That's it.
Great, thank you. Councilwoman Edwards.
I have to say I attended the Historical Society Museum groundbreaking today. That was super fun. I have been following that project for a long time, and to see it actually come to fruition is just awesome. Really looking forward to seeing that being built. And I wanted to thank the Historical Society for all the work that they put into making sure that the museum is stocked and funded and everything that they do behind the scenes. So that's it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Shipman.
I attended the school board meeting a week ago Wednesday. If anyone's interested, they do have another one tomorrow. They meet 2 Wednesdays a month. The public's always welcome, and it's eye-opening to see how much goes into our schools. They always focus on one department, like they'll come and talk. And this week's was transportation. And now it was eye-opening that we have over 10,000 students that we transport, 10,400 students, roughly 58% of our enrolled kids are on buses. As well as we have 78 students that have special needs. So they're on our special needs bus. We share busing with Granite Falls. I didn't know that. We currently have 91 drivers, 71 for Lake Stevens, 20 for Granite, and 18 subs. So we are making progress hiring school bus drivers. We have approximately 60 routes, 31 special ed routes. So a lot goes into it. And we always think of buses of getting kids to and from school. But there's so much more because we've got sporting events. We have Snow Isle in Mukilteo we get kids to and from. We have field trips during the day. So our transportation department is very busy, and they've moved to some app-based things that will literally tell a parent when the bus is almost to their bus stop. So they don't have to stand out there for a half an hour waiting for their bus. So that was really exciting to hear all the progress that they've made. And because that's, of course, always a big concern. We all see the signs all around the city looking for bus drivers. Also on February 18th from 5:30 to 6:30 at Stevens Creek, there's going to be an open house for elementary school number 8. The groundbreaking will take place this spring. So if you're interested in information about that, please feel free to join them. And then I always like to add something once a month. We have our Students of the Month and our Apple Awards, which is our staff, our school district staff. And so when I listen to the Students of the Month speak, some of the things they say is a riot. I mean, things that you would never think are really important to them are. So I'm going to quote another student again this week. This is a 6th grader from LSMS. And his favorite thing about LSMS is you get to move around a lot. So when he was in elementary school, he would leave class at least 3 times a day, but he really felt like it wasn't enough. So he really likes being in middle school because he can move around a lot. So there you have it. That's all I have this week.
Thank you. Councilman Donahue.
Yes, thank you. I will begin by echoing Councilmember Packard's comments about a police ride along. I was fortunate enough to do one myself. Likewise, found it very eye-opening, very proactive. Chief told me before I went that they were going to put me to work, and he wasn't kidding. So if you have the chance to do that, I would also encourage you to do that. I attended the Planning Commission meeting. Our commissioners are here with us tonight for our joint meeting. They covered this meeting and then also critical areas. I won't belabor that because I'll leave that time for our discussion later. And then the last thing I want to bring up during council business, because I don't think this warrants being a full discussion or agenda item, but Greg, if I could tag you in here very briefly. Last week when I was watching the council meeting online, a comment was made about, effectively it was, there is no defamation during a campaign. And that struck me, and I was a little concerned by that because I don't believe that's the case. So could I just quickly have you weigh in on that? And if that is not the case, confirm that or let me know I'm wrong and need to buckle up for next campaign season.
Well, New York Times versus Sullivan, very famous Supreme Court case that probably we've all heard talked about at one point in time in the news media, set a very high standard. The actual malice for campaign speech to be bring about allow someone to have a cause of action for defamation. Campaign speech is highly protected under the First Amendment. And it's there to make sure that public officials can talk about their offices, what they're doing. They can talk about their opinions and talk about their opposing candidates and so forth. I think there's probably a difference in what you might talk about what you think about your opposing candidate and just somebody in the community, maybe who's supporting financially or whatever. But actual malice is a high standard. It's basically you're saying what you're saying just to be malicious.
Okay.
Right? If you frame things as an opinion, it's my opinion that so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be protected speech. Even if, your opposing candidate, they don't like it, right? Because it's just your opinion and your opinion as a candidate is protected. But if you go beyond opinions and you start making remarks about somebody's maybe history, what you think they've been involved with or so forth, and you do that without any, say, factual basis to be able to make those claims, you don't frame it as an opinion.
They can still be defamation.
Only doing this to personally attack you potentially could be subject to a defamation action.
Okay.
So it's not a free license, but you got a lot of room there.
High bar, but it is there. Okay, that's all. I heard that on the record, so I wanted to make sure we address that on the record. Okay, nothing else from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman McManus.
Thank you. Yeah, I did attend the AWC meeting, as Councilman Packard said. I thought it was a great event to network with some of our partners down in Olympia. I was impressed really with how prepared the mayor was and how driven he was and how focused he was in the meetings. I credit staff for some of that, but he has a great way of walking down the hallway, and I don't think we passed too many people that we didn't know or he didn't know and said hello to. So that was a great meeting. It was really good to see, some of the challenges the state's facing and how it relates to our city and what we're gonna have to battle for this year. So it was really good to get into the mix and glove up and get going on that, right? And also attended the groundbreaking today for the new museum. Thought it was a great turnout of folks and really appreciate the communities putting their support behind that. I think it's important and I hope it gets highly utilized. That's all.
Thank you. Councilwoman Araya.
Thank you. Congratulations to the city and the Historical Museum for the groundbreaking today. Looking forward to construction being done, I think, later this year. Great turnout. I also attended the special meeting that Community Transit had on January 15th, and I wanted to share a little bit. This is the meeting where they chose the board members, alternates, and that was pretty much the whole meeting. So their regular meeting is February 5th, 3 p.m. There are 19 jurisdictions total that the PTVA represents and collects sales tax from. 4 of them are large cities. We became a large city 2 years ago. So it's Linwood, Edmonds, Marysville, and Lake Stevens. There are 6 medium cities: Arlington, Bothell, Mill Creek, Monroe, Mount Lake Terrace, and Mukilteo. And then there's 9 small cities. There are 2 members from the medium sized cities and 2 alternates. There are 2 members from the small cities and 1 alternate, and there are 3 members from the large cities and 1 alternate. So from the large cities, everybody gets a seat, so to speak, in the board, either an alternate or a member seat. And then there are some cities in the medium size or small size that don't get either. The way this is conducted, the large cities, medium cities, and small cities all break out into rooms and vote on who's going to be on the members and who's an alternate. So it's not a really, I guess, it's not a very transparent public process, but it's not, I guess it was the first time I was going through it. So it was eye-opening and interesting. There was no, I guess, no rotation system that is set up. So Linwood had been a member, Marysville had been a member, Edmonds had been an alternate for 4 years. And we had been a member for the last 2 years as a large city and previously as a medium city. So voting, the members for the large cities are Linwood, Edmonds, and Marysville. I pleaded the case that Linwood, since they have all of the transit service or most transit service in the county, they recently got light rail and CT configured their routes around light rail in 24 and beyond. But I was in minority, so we are an alternate. I do plan to propose change in that process, which is coming back around in 2 years. So every 4 years, they look at the rules. Every 2 years, they vote on the rotation of members and alternates. So that was interesting. I would hope that we would get into a rotation system to where every jurisdiction would switch from position 1, 2, 3 alternates, so that if your turn comes and you don't want to be there, you can step back. And this way it feels like more of the medium cities too will have more of an opportunity and the smaller ones. So the other thing that I've learned is that you do get a per diem for CT board business of $160 a day. So if anybody else is interested in the future in this board, you should know that. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just really quick, I wanted to echo what Councilman Packard said around the Snohomish County Cities Dinner. Also had a chance to attend, and it's a great networking opportunity, but also there tends to be pretty good speakers that come and talk about issues that are important to cities throughout Snohomish County. So I know Caitlin usually sends out the reminder about those dinners. If you have a chance, they're on Thursdays. Is it monthly or every other month? I can't remember.
Monthly.
Every other. Oh, okay. Okay.
Isn't it?
It's either monthly or every other month. And next time it comes around, would just really encourage you to attend. It's a great opportunity to meet other folks from other cities. And also just want to say, as a parent who now has the bus app and can see when the bus is coming, I super appreciate that technology. So glad that transportation got a chance to come and speak to it. That's all I have. Thanks.
Cool. Great reports. For myself, yeah, last week we were in Olympia, had a good board meeting with the Association of Washington Cities, and then went into hitting the hill with Nathan and Brian and Gene, and that was it. We didn't have anybody else.
And Trevor, our lobbyist.
Oh, and Trevor, our lobbyist, and just had some really good meetings. I will bring up again, I brought this up last week, 2 bills, or 1 bill, and now a second one that I'm very concerned about. Governor Ferguson has asked this legislature, and I'm glad the planning commission is here tonight, for a bill that would trump all commercial zoning for residential, and not only residential, but only residential, high-rise apartment residential kind of stuff. So imagine, if you will, the south side of 20th Street, all high-rise apartments, no retail. We've even asked for retail first floor and been told no. That mandated upon you across every city in the state. Again, I will say that land use and planning you have very little to do with it at this level, because it's all dictated from the state. And when we see those sorts of laws being passed in Olympia, and we lose the small city character of our city because of that, and you guys and these guys get blamed for it, it's the wrong blame. And I will also bring up, there's another bill that just popped up that will changed. You remember the step housing you guys just did? Changes all the rules. So if that passes, we get to waste our time doing that again. When we have so much other things we should be working on. So those are my two little soapboxes for the night. And I just want citizens to know that it's a lot of stuff that happens in our city isn't necessarily under our control.
If you have a moment at some point, can you let us know what how those House bills are?
I can't.
Great, thanks.
Um,
Not right now.
Russ, you want to grab them real quick? Also monitoring a lot of the law enforcement bills that are going on out there. There's some good leeway on the flock cameras. Sorry, Bruce. And that we're working on and just some good leeway on that. And I think that is it. Had a great event with the Historical Society today. It was a lot of fun, and it was good to see a lot of smiles on people who put literally decades and decades of their life into Lake Stevens and making sure our story's told. All right, moving on to next. Let's do some city department reports. Jeff, you are up.
Thanks, Mayor. Council, I'm just with you tonight. I'm going to keep this brief because I know we're going to be talking about some of this stuff at the retreat. First, I want to thank those that have gotten an opportunity to meet my staff by going on ride-alongs or participating in the Citizens Academy. That builds a lot of great relationships with my staff, and they really enjoy being able to present the work that they do on a daily basis to you folks. Talking about the strategic plan, how this works, and I'll get into the weeds a little bit today, but not too deep. And then we will discuss more at the retreat on the 7th. But how this works is you build a foundation. We build our mission and vision statements. With our mission statement being built is we serve the Lake Stevens community by enhancing public safety and the quality of life through professional police services, organizational excellence, and community interaction. Built within our mission statement is 3 initiatives: first, professional police services, organizational excellence, and community interaction. What our strategic plan does is now brings that forward with goals. You can see the goals that are listed in your staff report that was attached, talking about the different things that we're doing. The first and most important is crime suppression and reduction to reduce crimes trends in our community. We have been blessed in 2023. We're one of the 5th safest cities in Washington. 2024, we're the 10th safest city. We haven't got the report for 2025, but I expect we'll be in that area. I'm proud of the stat work that the patrol staff does on a daily basis, and then the staff that does behind the job, that does the stuff that nobody ever sees. That's our records unit evidence officer, our community service officers, and those folks. Our focus is on priority 1 and priority 2 crimes. We want to see a reduction by 1% by 2028. In 2024, you can see their priority 1 was at 176, priority 2 was at 555. In 2025, we were down to 128 on priority 1 calls and 538 in priority 2 calls. The next one is increasing our traffic safety program. This is a big thing where we built a relationship with our engineers over at Public Works, working on the engineering part of it. Our SROs are doing education. Our SRO was just selected to work in traffic court for youths who get tickets. They get to be on a board and work and mentor those youths to become better representatives of our city and behave in a safe manner when they're driving. And then, of course, the enforcement. We've been down. We haven't had a traffic officer in almost 2.5 years because of our staffing levels, but we're still focused on that. We're picking up what we're trying to do with traffic, and we're getting some stats that are brought out to the forefront to be able to use some of the data we have, even though we don't have a crime analyst. Our records unit's been polling that data for several years, but just recently, Zach from IT has worked with Emily over at Marysville PD and used their dashboard on Power BI and brought all that data towards us where I can see it on a daily basis. In the result of the traffic, we had 4 fatals in 2024. In 2025, we only had 2. And one of those incidents is considered maybe a non-traffic fatality. That is where somebody has a medical issue or dies by suicide or some other related non-traffic related something to that effect. Then you can see our PDRs. That is one of the biggest things, as you guys hear all the time, is a public disclosure request and what happens with all those. In 2024, we had 396 incidents beyond 5 days. In 2025, my staff worked so hard to get that down to 196 incidents in 2020 or 5 days. They're also looking at ways to reduce public disclosure requests. And one of the things was that we have collision reports that come to us every time there's a collision. And you know how many collisions we handle on Highway 9 at 204. There's a lot of those requests from third-party vendors, people that are physical therapists, people that are doctors, people that are chiropractors. They ask for that on a daily basis. So our staff has to process those collision reports and send them out. Well, now we've just given them over to the State Patrol and say, you guys can get them through State Patrol. So that handled it for us and is going to reduce a lot of those requests coming in. And then building our wellness program. We had an MHP assigned to us, which we had a grant. Unfortunately, we did not get our grant again. We've been looking for other opportunities, but our MHP put 333 hours into our staff in 2025. It has been a big, significant change. We're seeing the change in our staff, especially reporting to work, not getting hurt, all the great things that comes out of it. We have an incident happen. She's immediately there helping them through that process, and it's become a really good relationship with her. She's outstanding. Our peer support and wellness person has started a regional quarterly meeting with all peer support teams within the region. And he's done a great job setting these up where they meet on a regular basis, trying to come up with ideas and how the law is changing for peer support and working through those challenges. But I take it upon Phil Bassett to take that initiative and become a leader in that. And he's done a very good job. Going down to our accreditation process, this is how we get our funding through accreditation, is working through the 180 some standards. Julie Hubert is our manager on this, and she does an outstanding job. She works as accreditation person to help with different accreditations across the state and Lee maps where they go in and they audit law enforcement agencies who request that. They have what's called the basic, which is the Lee map, and then they have the full accreditation. The full accreditation can take weeks for us to get done, handing out proofs, showing proof of our work, getting all that done. And we do that. We got established in 2024, and now our renewal will be up in 2028. And Julie does an outstanding job with that. And our staff completes internal audits and make sure that they process all the information over to Julie. She uses those as a proof and processes them. And then the last, our community events. Those are what's special to us. All the community events, working with Surfer and on National Night Out, playing the charity softball game. Yes, we won this year. But it is a great relationship. And, you know, Aquafest, we have Pops with Cops and, Coffee with Cops and all those different events. You know, those last couple of years, we've been really short-staffed, and being down 4 to 5 people on a regular basis, it takes a lot. We have a sergeant and 2 patrol officers every 12 hours. So they're answering calls, and our calls for service I've already seen going up this year has already gone up 12%. So it just, what do you do with the widgets we have and how do we make it work? But in the end, our staff got us to be the 10th safest city in 2025 or 2024. So the work there is just outstanding. And now what happens after the strategic plan, this will go out and every quarter we'll update the stats. We'll put this out on our public website in our SharePoint site, so our staff is seeing it. And then we have a display board in our patrol office, our patrol room, that they can see the work that they're doing and how it's affecting our goals and the work that they're doing to accomplish those goals. And then also we changed out our annual review process. We do check-ins quarterly, and then we have an annual review, and the annual review is tied into our strategic plan along with the city. Our strategic plan ties into the city's strategic plan. So it's all together there. Like I always tell my staff, we're building a new house, we're remodeling. We got the foundation, the walls are coming up, the roof's coming on. We're going to start building the deck and all the great things outside to make it a great place. And we're getting there. We're getting staff hired. We're down to 4. We have 2 patrol officers, a traffic officer, and a detective position that we're working to fill in 2026. So with that, if you guys have any questions, I'll leave it just to that till we get to next or a couple weeks.
Chief, you mentioned a 12% increase in calls already. Do we
Yep.
have any idea what is behind that?
Just calls, it's regular calls. The city's growing.
All right. Fair enough.
And I think somebody else had a question there.
I have just a quick question on your reducing number of PDRs that extend past the original 5 business days. You had a 50% reduction from 24 to 25, and yet the goal is to reduce it by 1% by 2028. That felt a little And not as ambitious? Is there a reason for, was that meant to be 10% or is that?
No, that is what it is because we added staff. So
Okay.
we were able to drop it quite a bit. We just don't think we'll keep up with that pace because of the
Oh,
staff
okay.
work and stuff. So we've remodeled our records unit where we have full-time PDR person now and a full-time person that redacts videos, plus the other people that have to process all the case files. So we kind of remanage that. So we're hoping for a decrease, but not a big one this year.
Thank you.
Was there somebody else over here?
I had a similar question.
Okay.
Any other questions for the chief? All right, great report, chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And let's go to Caitlin.
Good evening, council. I wanted to speak to you tonight about our upcoming council retreat. So, it's going to be on Saturday, February 7th. We're going to be over at the Police Training Center. And I know this is the first time that this group has had a retreat. So we were just going to give you the draft agenda and kind of go over a little bit of what the day might feel like and get some feedback. Lori Erickson, our fantastic public works analyst and director of our lean program, is going to facilitate for us. So we'll all be in that room together with her facilitating. From a logistics standpoint, at the bottom, you can see we'll kind of have an entry time of around 7:30 for coffee and refreshments to kind of come in. And then we have a pretty packed day. So we'll be working from 8 to 4 with potentially a working lunch. We'll bring food into you guys. We will obviously have breaks for everyone to stay comfortable. But we do want to get quite a bit of work done together as a group. For the draft agenda, we have obviously want to kind of open it up with some icebreakers and team building. Lori's great at that, and we're looking forward to spending time with you. And then we'll move into our strategic plan, our mission, vision, and values, kind of introduce that to council, and then go into just sort of overviews of each department. So who's in the department, what work is done, and give each department head time to present that to council and kind of answer questions and go through that. Then we're going to go ahead and have lunch and have Greg join us because there's going to be an executive session after lunch to talk about litigation and again, just continue to sort of work through that topic with you. We'll move into a comp plan overview, a capital projects overview. We have an initiative out of Public Works called OpenGov. We'd like to introduce that to council. I'm going to go over some council travel overview for the year and talk about dates and kind of process with that. I know that 2 of you have already experienced that, but there's lots to come up and we would like to go over that with you. And then Jean wants to just go over the council procedures and kind of get feedback and start looking at that as a larger group. So we'd love some feedback from you if you have additional items or questions you have about that. We've kind of got this boiled down to where we think it's in a good place, but we'd love to hear from you before we get that solidified next week.
Yes, I do have one item. We could probably tag it on to council procedure review or either before or after. I would like to just set aside some time to discuss as a group the council agenda structure and maybe if there's things we can move around, everything's numbered, maybe flip some of those numbers around just to make, see if we can be more efficient up here doing council business. So not literal council business, but the business of the council.
Great.
And I just want to make a note, and actually Caitlin may not even know this. I think we're going to do a lot of that litigation executive session with you tonight. So we'll see if we still need that at the retreat. Is that correct, Greg?
Well, we have 2 different issues.
You're right. You're right. Actually, we have litigation executive session tonight and we have one next week on February 3rd. And then we may not need it at the retreat.
Right.
Correct.
I think we scheduled it.
Yeah, so yeah.
So we didn't have to deal with it after the retreat.
Yeah, so we may not do that part at the retreat, the executive session. We may be able to take care of that tonight and next week.
Like with most of our agenda planning, it's a draft until we
Yes.
send it out to you. So
Things are always.
you'll have to be a little bit flexible, but yes, I've added that item.
Thank you.
So
Can you explain the open government project overview? What is that?
Aaron?
That's why you have to come to the retreat.
Yeah, I'm happy to come. I'm just wondering if I have an item. I'm wondering if that's it, but maybe not.
Yeah, so, Councilmember Packard, the OpenGov demo is to share with you an idea for a solution for asset management in Public Works.
Okay.
And we have an asset management system now called ViewWorks. It has Citizen View, which I think you're aware of. This is an improvement to that
Okay.
system.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you. So one of the things that I'd like to talk about is, and I know Councilmember Edwards has a similar concern, the use of social media and determining what is and is out of bounds for us. I think that's a good agenda topic, or at least we need to address it sometime soon. So if it doesn't happen there, I'd like to have another forum for discussing it.
And that is something that we've been actively researching and we're gathering information. We want to make sure we bring it back fully baked to have that conversation. And then again, as soon as possible. So if we can get that on the agenda, I'll work with City Administrator Brazel and see if we can do that. If not, we will give you an estimate of when we think we can bring that back.
Okay.
Because if we don't do it at the retreat, it could also be a workshop topic.
Yes,
Is that accurate?
absolutely.
Sure, or if it's helpful, Councilmember Edwards and I can just come into the city office and talk about it with you and flesh some of that out, bring it back later for everyone to review at another time. I mean, I'm open to, I guess my only concern when you say that you would have something baked, I would like to be involved in talking about what that is. And so I'm just concerned too much effort will be put into a solution that doesn't meet some of our needs or concerns.
And I think what we're doing is we're researching with the county and fellow cities, gathering that information, speaking with our city attorney to bring information back on all of the scenarios and what that would look like.
Okay,
So it's a dialogue, not that
Great.
it's a decision. Just to clarify.
that sounds great.
Just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question? I know our city has their own social media. I'm not sure who runs it, but you know, everything from Coffee with the Mayor to the Splash and anything going on is on our city page. Is there any reason why the agenda is not on the page? So that way, citizens, you know, because what I keep hearing is communication. And if they're getting their social, you know, the communication from social media, I think that would be beneficial to just put our agenda on there because it's already on the website.
Yeah, that's actually Olivia Baumgartner, who does an amazing job with our
Oh, that's
social
right.
media. And yeah, we can certainly link our agenda. That's not a problem. And in fact, in the splash, she talks about the upcoming meetings.
It does.
We could link right there to the agenda. Yeah, I'll send her a message about that.
I have a suggestion, a follow-up from that is also doing a council meeting like review on social media. That's something that I had a lot of people express interest in. And just being able to find the main points on one spot for people who can't make it to the meeting or can't spend 3 hours watching the meeting. That might be a good idea also.
Okay.
So the danger with that is whose interpretation of what happened?
Well, so kind of a bridge there. Are you talking about more than what's already in the minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, we already have minutes. They're published.
On the Facebook,
No,
that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, so what's in the packet, like the minute, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking about like posting something like that, or you're looking for
Sure.
more?
Yeah,
Whatever we can get.
the only thing, just keep in mind, the minutes come to you like the next meeting to actually be approved. So
Yeah.
they're a little
So-
bit after.
I did see a couple other cities that do this, so I'll go back and look and see who's doing it and maybe we can reach out to.
Sure.
them
Yeah,
and see.
that's the kind of dialogues that we'd like to have with you guys.
And I would like to suggest that it not just be a couple of folks coming to meet with you. I do think it needs to be a full
Yeah.
council conversation, whether it's the retreat or the workshop.
But linking to the agendas, we can do that easy. It'd be all in one place in the splash.
So Nate Naring does one every week for Snohomish County Council on LinkedIn. I watched just today. It's about 45 minutes.
and,
It's very high level.
and the county staff doesn't like it
They don't like it. Yeah.
because of the problem.
I just thought they were captured.
Because of the problems it creates. So that's the discussion we can have. Let's have this discussion at a discussion time that's on the agenda.
Yeah.
It's all good points, but that's not where we're at tonight.
I have
Go ahead.
an addition to the workshop, perhaps. Is there a way that we can at least agree on a timeline for budget conversations that are closer or than the November, December at the workshop? Maybe we can talk about what months we can start looking at the budget and set up some dates.
So I will not actually be at the council retreat, so there probably won't be a lot of budget discussion. I know the mayor will have some things that he wants to discuss, but I will be doing my intro to the finance department next Tuesday here at council, which will also kind of go into some of the high level of budgets. What are the budget types? Is there a direction that we want to go that's different than our current direction, and then we'll kind of dive into it like that. And we are looking at doing things a little bit differently this year, and maybe looking at some wider long-term fiscal sustainability programs. Maybe looking into something like that, bringing council in and bringing community in to make some of these bigger decisions. So we do have a lot of things that we're kind of working through that we want to bring to council and discuss a bit more. So we are on the horizon.
I think this is a packed agenda with, I think budget will have a lot of conversations. Probably not in here, but more of a timeline kind of, more on you or the mayor or when we can expect or maybe plan for that discussion.
Yeah.
Anything else on the retreat agenda? All right, great. Good discussion. Can I get a motion to pass the consent agenda, please?
I make a motion to pass the consent agenda.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion?
just a reminder that we're moving item F to action.
Correct. And we're actually going to do that right after this motion because we have a staff member waiting online to discuss that movement. So all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, consent agenda pass. Let's go to 10F. Jeff and Julie, you guys want to talk about it? Or do you want to talk about it? Or Nathan, do you want to ask a question? What do you want to do there?
So can I just give you a quick overview of the two different fundings and what this program's about? It might answer some of this, but Julie is online. So we have what's called the VRF, which is the vessel registration fees by the county that comes through your buying of a boat, your registration for your boats that comes in as a one funding. This is also a grant fund that we have to do this program through A299 and A300, which we get a grant, which we're not getting this year. It's around roughly between 13 and 16,000, but Julie can answer the questions you may have, Councilman Packard.
Yeah, thank you. So the primary questions, I forget which page, sorry, but there were two items around, okay, if we are getting this money from the state, right, we have obligations to do certain things, including, it talked about like number of boat inspections that need to happen, number of patrol hours on the lake, et cetera. So if we don't have that money, and then does that mean that we're not going to have a certain amount of patrolling hours on the lake, et cetera? How are we doing that? How are we meeting?
I apologize. Can everybody hear me okay? We have budget set aside, some budget set aside for our marine program, and there are available VRF funds from previous years. We do a reporting on that annually. So there are remaining VRF funds that we can also pull from to fund the program. With this agreement, it does list our obligations, and without that, we won't be eligible to receive. If we don't continue, I guess, meeting these obligations, we won't be able to receive the VRF funds in the future when they do come through the county. And again, the VRF funds are from the state when people register their boats. The grant funding and the paperwork that comes with that is separate from this.
Yeah, and so like you look at, we have 244 hours. Barb can give me a number, but I think it's right around 150 an hour for overtime. So you're making $36,000 and we're only getting $13,000 back. This is not only happening with the state parks, but we just lost our funding for our ballistic vest grant. We also lost, what was the other funding, Julie, that we just, it was the state parks and the ballistic vest, right? Were the two grants?
Yes.
So far? Yes.
Yeah, but both of those were coming federally. I'm not justifying it, but those are federal dollars where these ones are coming from the state. Most often what we do with our boating program is our school resource officers will work the boat in the summertime, and their salaries are accounted for already in the budget. A lot of times the grant covers any overtime that is associated with our marine program.
Thank you. That answers my questions.
We'll do the best job we can.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, can I get a motion to pass that then?
I move to authorize the mayor to sign the interlocal agreement with the Washington State Parks for vessel registration funds.
Second the motion.
You have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Good discussion. Let's do this joint meeting. Let's do some planning, mission meeting.
You guys want to-
I'll teach you one and then. Yeah, because that was with us.
All right, I'm going to share a few things.
Yeah. Right, we're all in our seats. What do teachers say? Ready to go, we're in our seats.
Connor, that's you.
Countdown.
I hope so.
Sorry.
Where's that? Okay. So tonight is the evening. We're going to have our joint meeting with the City Council and Planning Commission. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our new chair, Bruce Morton, to introduce the Planning Commission or have them do the introductions themselves. Before we do that, though, just wanted to point out tonight, rather than some sort of a dialogue like we've had in the past, staff's really planned a training session for the benefit of City Council and the Planning Commissioner. Both boards have new members, so we want to go over lots of materials quickly, leave time for question and answer, and then go into our work program. And from the staff point of view, we're going to split it up between myself, Principal Planner Levitan, and Planning Manager Schmidt. So Chair Morton.
So we also have, I know that you all have many new members on your council, and we have some new members of our council. So I'm just going to let everyone introduce themselves. But first, I was just elected as the chair for the Planning Commission, and I've been on the Planning Commission for a couple of years and really enjoyed it. So let's start with Jennifer Davis.
I'm one of the commissioners, Davis. I'm Jennifer Davis. Lived in Lake Stevens since 1996, and I'm in my 4th term as a planning commissioner. My husband and I were super happy to raise 3 kids here who are out in the world. And yeah, this has been an awesome opportunity to help watch the city grow and have an impact.
Thank you. My name is Janice Huxford. I am a planning commissioner also in my 4th term, and I'm pleased to be here this evening. I love a good training.
Right. Hi, I'm Amy. I'm a registered nurse, have a couple of kids, absolutely love Lake Stevens, and I'm excited to support the city.
My name is Mike Dewar, Lake Stevens resident since 2009, and I've been on the planning commission since 2020, and excited to be part of this group.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is James Salz. I am also a new commissioner. My family and I have been here for going on 5 years now. Love it. This was a way for me to give back to the community that has accepted us. So appreciate the opportunity.
And Connor Davis, this is my 4th year on the Planning Commission. My wife and I are both teachers at Northlake Middle School. I've got 2 boys, one at Northlake, one at Cavalera now. And we moved here in 2018 and love Lake Stevens. Appreciate y'all.
So during our last meeting, we talked about some of the things we wanted to talk to you all about. And I think Russ has some of those things on here. So
yes. Okay, and before I jump into the training to answer the mayor's question and Council Member Georgetown's question, the bills are House Bill 2266. And the companion is Senate Bill 6069. That's the step housing. The residential development and commercial mixed use zones is Senate Bill 6026. Sure, Senate Bill 6026. Okay, so what we want to talk about tonight is just basically land use planning in Washington State, small topic. Want to talk a little bit about comprehensive plans, just to set the stage again for some of the new members. Where have we been? Where are we at today? What are some of the major planning efforts we've worked on in the city? Want to spend a little bit of time talking about city council, planning commission, and staff roles as it relates to land use. And then we will go over some of our accomplishments in 2025 and the proposed work plan for 2026. And feel free to stop us along the way if you need more information. I'm going to try to keep this at a high level. And I will send out the slideshow later on if people want to spend a little bit more time and look at some of the resources. So, crash course, land use planning in Washington State. So the planning in Washington State really started with a couple of acts. There was the Planning Enabling Act, which really just set up the framework for cities to create planning agencies, which oftentimes include their planning commission, their city council, staff. It can also include other bodies like a hearing examiner. And then there's the local project review. That tells us how are we going to do development review applications. And it proposes to integrate the project permit review with environmental review. And these are living documents that grow. And the local project review has been amended in the last couple of years, which set the new timelines for our permit decisions. There's also some environmental acts that have come out of state legislation that are fundamental to planning, one being the Shoreline Management Act, and the other is the State Environmental Policy Act. So the Shoreline Management Act really relates to waters of the state, whether that's a lake or certain types of streams and rivers. And it just requires that the state, counties, and local jurisdictions really are paying attention to what's happening along our shorelines, the land uses, and making sure that those are compatible, not a hodgepodge approach that had been sort of taken before 1971. The same is true of the Environmental Policy Act, which integrates several principles that you look at when you do both what's called a project review. So that's a development, and a non-project application, which is what applies a lot of the time to the Planning Commission's work, where you still have to do an environmental analysis on the code amendment that you're working on. And really, it's just there is a non-project section, and you just have to anticipate potential environmental impact. Sometimes there's none. It's just a legislative exercise. Other times you're adopting land use controls that may have an impact. And so we just need to quantify what those are and address those and mitigate those if there's a cause and effect. So I'll pause for a second. Any thoughts on these four basic land use principles? Okay. So as we moved on, here's the big one. This is the Growth Management Act. So RCW 3670A, you'll hear us talk about this a lot. What the Growth Management Act did is it took all of these disparate framework of different legislation and put them into an overarching framework to do planning in Washington State. It looks at natural resources. It looks at the built environment, the natural environment. It looks at projected growth for communities, make sure communities are looking at things like transportation, infrastructure. So it is the overarching planning framework that we operate under. Within it, there are several elements. I won't go over all of those. I've just sort of listed off some of those, but things I didn't list, it also talks about citizen participation. So that's a key part to the Growth Management Act is you have to engage your citizens as you're making land use decisions. It also looks at private property rights. That's also a fundamental in Washington state planning law. You have to consider the impacts of decisions on private properties. And so I'm going to leave it there. It's very dense, but again, the takeaway is the Growth Management Act sets the framework that we create our local plans under and then our subsequent development regulations. And those are the issues that the Planning Commission deals with pretty heavily
in their work plan. The next document we look at is Vision 2050. So you have GMA, Growth Management Act, that looks at statewide protocols. You have Vision 2050 that are considered the multi-county planning policies. So really, these are the fastest growing communities in the Puget Sound. Those counties have to also adhere to this other layer of government and framework as you develop your comprehensive plans. And so some of the elements in the GMA, or excuse me, in Vision 2050 are probably more restrictive than GMA. So you just keep going layer by layer down, sort of that reverse birthday cake as you get to your local regulations. Then you have the countywide planning policies. So the countywide planning policies, again, start with a look at the GMA, Vision 2050, and then as you work through the county, in this case, we work through Snohomish County tomorrow and have representatives from the county, cities, towns, and tribes work together to set these countywide planning policies. And these really deal with setting our growth targets, reevaluating our buildable lands, and then looking at the monitoring reports. And so that body is very active in helping set these standards for the county, which then are adopted by the county and translate into their code and their comprehensive plan. And lastly would be the city's comp plan. But again, this just shows you that there is a hierarchy of planning policies starting at the state, going to the regional framework, countywide plan, and then the local plan and development regulations. So that's a lot of information so far. I'll pause again. And if you need me to restate anything, please let me know, or if you have any questions, and then otherwise we'll move on.
I'm just curious, you said the Vision 2050 plan is for the fastest growing areas in Washington State. Does that mean that other counties don't have that step? Does it just go from the GMA to the countywide planning?
That's correct.
Okay.
So King County, Thurston County, Pierce County, Kitsap, Snohomish, and I believe Whatcom County is now included in that as well.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor? Okay. Okay, I'm going to hand it off to Dave, and he can talk about the comp plan, development regulations, and what public participation looks like.
All right, thanks, Russ. So yeah, we're going to focus a little bit about basically how we take all these different levels, the state level, the regional level, the countywide level, and how that gets implemented through our comprehensive plan and then through our development regulations. So we obviously just went through a pretty big process that resulted in the adoption of an updated comprehensive plan back in November of 2024. So basically, the comprehensive plan is our primary policy document. It guides how we want to grow, how the city's going to develop, what the city's priorities are. It's a combination of technical analysis, background information, and then goals and policies. It basically established that framework for the next 20 years. So the document is a living, breathing document. It covers a 20-year horizon. There's a couple different ways that it's updated. So every 10 years, state law requires us to go through what's called a periodic update, where we basically need to go through the entire document, assess how it's compliant with state law, with Vision 2050, with countywide planning policies. And so that's what was completed in November 2024 through adoption via city ordinance. And then we have what's called an annual docket, which we do every year. We are currently at the end of the solicitation period for docket proposals. So if anybody is listening tonight and would like to propose any changes, those proposed comprehensive plan amendments need to be submitted by January 31st. Of each year. So you're still welcome to submit those. That information is available on the website. So the comp plan, serves a lot of different purposes. Obviously, it establishes that framework. It's meant to basically track how the city is changing, demographics, things along those lines. And then how basically there's a really important component of that is tying the growth and development to the city's infrastructure and our infrastructure needs. kind of the concept of concurrency, not just that we need to grow, but how are we going to grow? How is our transportation system going to accommodate that growth? How are our other capital facilities going to accommodate that growth? So that's a really integral component, is that relationship between infrastructure and development. So when we get down, we have this primary policy document being the comprehensive plan. It's then implemented through a variety of different ordinances and programs and policies. One of those being the city's development regulations. So that's primarily within Title 14 of the Lake Stevens Municipal Code, and then associated chapters as well. So basically that covers things like permissible uses, development regulations such as setbacks and height, critical areas regulations, which we're going through a periodic update of our critical areas ordinance. So things like wetland buffers and how, what types of uses are permitted within critical aquifer recharge areas, which is a new type of, not a new type, but a critical area that's currently not included with our development regulations, and which we're being required to update those development regulations to be consistent with state law. It discusses really an important component in what's come out of recent legislative sessions is making sure that we have clear and objective standards that are easy to implement, that basically it doesn't take a PhD to understand the code, how that's actually going to be implemented, what I need to do to get a project approved. You want to make sure that your regulations are as clear and objective and as easy to follow as possible. And then as Russ noted earlier, at the statewide level, there's really, through the GMA, there's discussion of private property rights. So recognizing that, kind of balancing things like property rights, environmental protection, our growth targets, and then making sure that there is an adequate nexus between your regulations and really the public health and safety, basically documenting why you have your regulations in place, that there is that nexus, that there is a rational reason for why those regulations are in place.
Is everybody clear with the term nexus and what that means?
No.
Okay, it's the relationship of an action to the outcome. So if you ask somebody, you can't ask somebody to build a new bridge over the Snohomish River if they have a single family house in the northern part of Lake Stevens. There's no connection between that house and the action you're requesting of them. So if we're asking the public through a permit decision to do something, build a sidewalk, contribute to our transportation funding, there has to be a correlation between the impact of their action and what we're asking them to do.
Okay, great. Thanks, Russ. So just kind of as we think about growth in the city of Lake Stevens, obviously it's been, for those, being at the Historical Society at the groundbreaking today for the museum, there were people that have lived here for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and the city has changed dramatically over that time. When you look at our annexation map, really up until about 20, 25 years ago, the city proper was focused basically here, and then just a very small radius extending from here was really the northeast corner of the lake. As over the last 20 years, through a series of annexations, first moving west, then south, then east around the south side of the lake, and then back up the east side of the lake, we have basically become, per the city's motto, one community around the lake. We now completely encircle the lake as far as the city. We've gone from about 6,000 residents in the late 1990s all the way up to about 43,000 residents today. So that's about a 7-fold increase. And through that time, obviously have seen a lot of residential development. We've seen, as we'll discuss in future slides, a lot of commercial development along SR9, along 20th Street, here in downtown Lake Stevens through our adopted sub areas. So really, growth has been the only constant, with Lake Stevens over the last 20 to 25 years. And it's reflected in the city's kind of role and stature within kind of the greater county, kind of going from a small city to a larger city. and that, that differing role. And so it is something that is continuing to evolve, but it's something that, that the Planning Commission, the City Council have been integral over the last couple decades, especially as that evolving city framework and that evolving city landscape has occurred. So growth targets, everybody's favorite topic. So growth targets, then we actually had a little bit of a discussion last week at Planning Commission that maybe a better term would be growth allocations or growth requirements. These are basically, they're established at the state level. They're then basically allocated out to individual counties, and then each individual county has a process for distributing that growth, basically the expected population increase, housing unit increase, and employment increase over the next 20 years. Here in Snohomish County, that's done through Snohomish County Tomorrow. So basically, there's a discussion how much of that growth is going to go to kind of the primary cities, obviously being Everett and then Marysville, Linwood, kind of how much of that growth should occur along high capacity transit corridors, how much of that should go to cities like Lake Stevens or Mill Creek or areas that aren't directly on mass transit lines or not directly on freeways. So there's really all those discussions. It's a couple-year process that precedes the periodic update to the comprehensive plan. So really from 2019, 2020, all the way through 2023, there were continuous collaborative discussions with other jurisdictions with Snohomish County. And what came out of that was the growth targets that were allocated to Lake Stevens and all of the other individual jurisdictions. So for us, for the period between 2020 and 2044, we were allocated that we were projected and needed to show our ability to 9,614 new residents, just shy of 5,000 housing units, and just over 3,200 jobs. So again, this starts at the state level. It's basically then allocated to the counties and then distributed within each county through a process that's established by that county. As far as housing growth that has occurred, obviously there was a lot of residential growth that has occurred over the last 30, 35 years. So when you look at this graphic, we had almost 5,000 new units between 1990 and 2024. Really the first 20, nearly 25 years of that, really through about 2015, primarily was still detached single family residential. That was the preferred type. We still had opportunities for large single family subdivisions. Over the last 5 to 10 years, as greenfield development has become less plentiful, unless there basically is not open space or open land to accommodate these large subdivisions anymore, we're starting to see more and more infill residential development. That's been accompanied by a lot of legislation coming out of Olympia that's pushing for things, terms such as middle housing, which is basically everything between detached single family residences and larger apartment complexes, so duplexes, triplexes, townhomes. And we are starting to see more of that over the last 10 years, and especially over the last few years, where we've adopted a number of different ordinances, a number of different changes to our development regulations related to middle housing, accessory dwelling units. We're starting to see more and more of those. So really, when you look at the housing production, it kind of started to peak at the single family stage and then started to come back down as obviously that land was not available for that housing type. And now we're kind of in a transitional period. We've had that kind of growth slow down a little bit, but it's starting to pick back up as we start to see more of this multifamily and middle housing. And we expect that trend to continue in the coming years. So similarly with population growth, we've seen a lot of growth. We've seen about 2,600 new residents, and that's above and beyond the large annexation that occurred in 2021 on the southeast side of the lake, the Southeast Interlocal Annexation. That added several thousand residents as well that were previously in the county, obviously. We've seen significant additional residential growth beyond that. So when you kind of deduct those 2,600 people from our growth target through 2044 of about 9,600 people, we're still projected to add and need to show that we can accommodate a little bit more than 7,000 more people over the next 18 years. Similarly, we do have that employment growth target that that was something that we needed to show as part of the 2024 periodic update, is that we needed to show that we had adequate zoned commercial and industrial land capacity to accommodate our projected employment growth. So as noted, it was about 3,200 jobs that we needed to add by 2044. So this is really where our sub areas come into play, and we'll talk a little bit more about those on a future slide, but we do have a very focused approach with commercial and industrial development here. It is really focused within our sub areas, that being downtown Lake Stevens, Lake Stevens Center, and then 20th Street Southeast Corridor, Lake Stevens Center being kind of the SR9 Frontier Village area. So that's really where most of our employment growth is projected, because that's where most, as well as the Lake Stevens Industrial Center just northeast of here. That's where most of our commercial growth, most of our industrial growth, and then hence most of our employment growth is anticipated to occur over the next 20 years. And just kind of going into and coming out of COVID, that had an impact on our employment growth, but we are starting to see job gains resume since 2021 and through 2024. And I touched on this briefly as far as our growth strategy. So we do have 3 adopted sub areas, as well as the industrial area where we've done an infrastructure analysis and where we are intending to do another sub area planning effort. So this map shows that, they're not all the same. I mean, they're geographically distributed. They have different characteristics, different infrastructure available to them. And so it's really important, as part of future dockets, as part of the 2026 docket, we're proposing additional updates to our sub-area plans just to make sure that those are consistent with the comprehensive plan. And that's another important component that I kind of didn't touch on. The comprehensive plan obviously needs to implement statewide legislation, the Growth Management Act primarily, as well as Vision 2050 and the countywide planning policies. The city's comp plan and its development regulations and its sub-area plans also need to be consistent. You can't have things that are not aligned with one another. That violates the Growth Management Act. And so we need to make sure that when we adopt an updated policy document in the comprehensive plan, that we're updating our sub-area plans, that we're updating our development regulations so that it doesn't result in a situation where we don't have internally consistent plans, policies, development regulations, and sub-area plans. Yeah.
My question was with what Brett brought up earlier with the new law. So if the state is saying how much we need to grow our employment, but now the state is saying you can't have commercial, you have to do all apartments.
Yeah, so it makes it difficult. And so it's not so much that you can't have commercial, it's that residential has to be allowed in some of these zones. So it makes it difficult for us to achieve our growth targets for employment if every commercially zoned area can now be built with standalone multifamily residential. And so it would have an impact, and it's something that each city is going to need to look at. Do we need to reopen our comprehensive plan? Do we need to relook at our growth targets? Do we need to do an updated buildable lands report that factors in the likelihood? I mean, there is still a bit of a market preference for residential as compared to commercial and industrial within kind of areas that aren't Seattle, that aren't Everett, that basically are out in the suburbs. And so that's something that we would need to tackle. And I think maybe that's something that isn't necessarily covered in the proposed legislation as far as the impacts that it's going to have on each individual jurisdiction.
But I can add that all of the cities that have evaluated this, that is the point that they're coming to and testifying that the two trains of thought don't line up. That if we have targets, we've just completed comprehensive plans to deal with this, then the two are incongruent, if you will. And so, yeah, that has been the commentary from all of the cities that I've seen.
Director Wright, if I might. My husband and I own a business here in Lake Stevens. It's one of the reasons that I volunteered to be a commissioner years and years ago, is to help with the economic growth in this city and to speak for those of us that are trying to be employers here. And none of the seated council members were part of this decision, but when that Hartford industrial area was rezoned to allow for pot production and sale, every single one of those businesses is now pot production or sale, except for ourselves and a neighbor. So there are things that we can affect as leaders in the city. There are things that we can't affect, as stated very eloquently this evening. And as commissioners, it's something that we value greatly, and what we can listen to and hear from our public and affect in a way that's going to be the best for the city. That was a decision, if you're looking back on it, that completely turned that area into a different opportunity than what it would have been now had a different decision been made at that time. So I'm just using that as an example, and I thought I would offer that up to some of our newer commissioners and newer council members to look at the greater good and the bigger picture sometimes.
And so if I'm understanding this correctly, if this passes, the city cannot say no. In other words, the people that own the land still control their land. But if a builder comes and wants to put a high rise on the top of Cavallero Hill, which is like one of our very last commercially zoned that we've been working for decades with Everett, I'm assuming decades, it seems like forever, to even be able to build on it. So we're finally almost at the end of that, where we're going to be able to have some more commercial space, which of course saves all of our taxpayers money because it generates revenue for the city. And so if a builder comes in and says, I want to put in a high rise here, the city cannot say no. Correct?
Let me tackle that. So the legislation doesn't put controls on your local development regulations. What it puts a restriction on is your permissible uses. It just says if you're allowing commercial, you have to allow residential in that same zone. You would still have control of your local development regulations for now, like the height of buildings, et cetera. In our case, though, our commercial height would be 55 feet. So that's not necessarily a high rise, that's a mid rise. All zoning controls are not being wiped out with that legislation, but it's taking away our ability to plan through what a preferred permissible use is. And
so just, I want to clarify some of the language I've heard. I think I've heard some residential and in the zone. Is there a ratio that's established, or potentially could all commercial be turned into purely residential?
As it's written, all commercial areas that would have to allow residential and mixed use zones that allow residential would also have to approve purely residential projects. There is some language coming back that's looking for a compromise, but it's offering like 20% ground floor retail, or ground floor retail that's an amenity zone to the apartment. That would be like their private gym, their private this, their private that. So it doesn't, the compromises, in my opinion, I'll use my opinion right now. Actually, in my professional opinion, don't go far enough to align with our growth allocations and targets.
Okay, so if I understood that, we're looking at potentially, as written now, either theoretically all residential or a ratio of commercial to residential that's effectively residential.
Right. And
Okay.
again, as pointed out by Councilmember Shipman, that becomes the property owner's
Decision. Yeah.
decision on how and what they want to develop.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. And I'm just going to take one more slide and then pass it off to Christy. But Russ talked a little bit about this as far as the importance of public input, public engagement. So obviously, there's the growth management side of things. There's the countywide planning policies. There's the multi-county planning policies that we're required to be consistent with. But just at the local level, the city council is obviously the legislative body. They rely on the planning commission as kind of their essentially their technical board for matters of land use, whether that's code amendments or comprehensive plan amendments. But really, the importance of public input is getting the voices of your entire community, kind of providing the venues for them to provide that input, to feed that into the planning commission, to provide that in directly to the city council so that the decisions that the city council are making, so that the recommendations that the planning commission are making are based on a broad-based spectrum of community input. And so that's something that really has been a focus in recent years, especially here in Lake Stevens. We've been developing kind of a comprehensive public engagement plan. We offered a number of different engagement opportunities for the comp plan, and for other kind of type 6 legislative amendments such as comprehensive plan amendments and land use code amendments. So that is really a cornerstone of land use planning, not just in the state of Washington per the Growth Management Act, but just as far as the community priorities and the input and the importance of that input that we've received from the Lake Stevens community. So with that, I'm happy to answer any kind of additional questions related to the comp plan and development regulations, or else we can move on. And Christy's going to be up next.
I have a question about the annexation map that you showed, the first city map. The gray areas on that map, those are the areas that are still available for the UGA? No.
So the dark gray areas are actually outside of the UGA.
The light gray part.
Yeah, so the light gray or the white, so basically kind of east of the lake and then south of the lake, those are our remaining UGA. So those are areas that can be annexed now.
So once that is maximized and those areas are annexed, there's a process you have to like petition or do something to be able to expand more. Like if for some reason it does get packed with residential and we need to come up with more space for the commercial, just briefly, what does that process look like?
So UGA expansions are primarily handled through Snohomish County's comprehensive plan. So Snohomish County was on the same timeline as the city. They were required to adopt their comprehensive plan by the end of 2024. Going all the way back to 2020, which is basically right after I started, we started working on our UGA expansion proposals in 2020, even though the comp plan and the decisions on UGA expansions weren't going to be, the county council wasn't going to make a decision on those until likely the end of 2024. We were required to submit those UGA expansion requests about 4 years in advance. So those were evaluated by the county, by county staff. We had a difference of opinion on the validity and the merits of our proposals and thought that they were consistent with countywide planning policies. That maybe wasn't the same opinion that county staff held. And so ultimately we had several UGA proposals. I think we had 4 in total. We had an area north of 92 for kind of some additional industrial land as well as some residential. We had proposed expanding south of 20th down along SR9, including some areas that already were exhibiting suburban or urban levels of development, expanding out west of Sunnyside, basically until you hit the floodplains and head down into the valley. And so basically none of those were approved. And so when we get to a point where we've met our growth targets and do not have any remaining UGA I think it's going to be important that obviously we consider and propose some targeted and warranted UGA expansions in the future.
So thank you.
But essentially, that's the expansion of the UGA is controlled by the counties.
Yeah.
As it was just said, and both King County and Snohomish County have been pretty darn animate that they don't want to do it. And they've rejected all proposals for the last decade or two with respect to that. So it's not something that we can count on or look to as something that's very likely to happen. Can I make another comment? I was just gonna make another comment on the briefly on the this new legislation that, it's been talked about, that it's kind of, it just doesn't gel with comprehensive planning. You plan for years as to how you want this community developed. Where you're putting your residential in relation to your commercial, where your commercial is going to be saving, and with anticipation that as your residential population grows, the commercial is going to grow, it's going to come here. And this type of legislation that mandates that residential can go into commercial areas really frustrates that whole planning process, takes away the big element, right? Public participation. That's what we've been told we need to do and you need to do. I'm just kind of bemoaning the fact that we've watched a lot of public participation, and what the legislature wants to do is take that away and tell you, yeah, you could still have public participation, but you're going to have to do this. And it's a big problem.
I'll stress a little bit more of the UGA problem. We made an ask to just clean up some of the lines. So if you go down 10th Street Southeast off of Lundin, if you get to the end of that, you hit a dead end. There's about 20 homes that are in the county at a dead end street in the middle of Lake Stevens. Those people have to wait for a deputy who could be in Sultan to respond to their call when they're literally in the middle of Lake Stevens. The county would not allow us to just easily grab those folks. So the idea that under the current county staff and current county council that we're going to be able to expand UGA is they would much rather see us go up than go out.
Thank you.
Even when it makes complete common sense. What else we got?
Okay, I'm going to briefly talk about the roles again of what does the staff do? What does the planning commission do? What does the city council do? Okay, so I'm going to just go through this really quickly. We're going to talk about this at your retreat in depth, but in general, the planning department, we have two main responsibilities. We have our planning division that oversees long-range planning, code development. We have our permitting team that look at the land use permits, code enforcement, economic development, and then we support the planning commission. We also have our building division. They review the building permits for life safety things. They do the inspections, also code enforcement, and they work on the permit intake and permit setup. So those are some distinct roles that the planning and community development team has. And then with the planning commission, again, we sort of talked about the Planning Enabling Act that said, yeah, we can have planning commissions to help look at those things. Under our local code, it's identified in chapter 2.64 of our municipal code, and it establishes the planning commission as the advisory board on land use, comprehensive planning, and zoning issues. So one of the things we talked about with the planning commission and that they wanted to really emphasize is they are the ones doing the heavy lifting. You know, they are doing the research, having those long discussions with staff, giving direction, talking to the community. And they really help to refine the proposals and our local land use initiatives through their work. Their recommendations come through debate, a lot of the time history, familiarity with land use topics. And again, they get to help facilitate that public communication and hold public hearings. And they provide recommendations to the city council on most what are called type 6. These are legislative applications. So you're changing the code, policy, or something. They advise on those things. And those types of applications are the comp plan amendments, the land use code amendments, and area-wide rezones. An area-wide rezone is a rezone that affects a land use designation change. So when you change your comprehensive plan map, you need to also be updating your zoning map. And the recommendations, they follow public input, findings of fact, and analysis of consistency with our planning documents, and then evaluation of impacts on other regulations. And I'll go ahead and see if the Planning Commission wants to add anything to this slide before I move on and talk about what the City Council does.
Yes. Yeah, a few months ago, we finished our work on the step housing recommendations that we had for you all. And we did a lot of research and work and into those topics of potentially of how to allow and where to place shelters and supportive housing, et cetera. When those recommendations came to you all, well, not to you all because it was a different council, but it was amended significantly. And I know that we know that it is your prerogative to accept or reject our input, but want to let it pass that to register our displeasure in massive changes to what we recommended. That's all.
And I would add that we don't always agree, and we like it that way, but we're always respectful in our disagreements. I think that we as a commission have been, again, looking for the greater good, not for a personal good. And I happened to sit on the panel that interviewed the applicants for our two newest. We had many fine candidates. We chose these two, and Auntie George sat on that with me because they filled holes in our commission. So they are here because there were places that we thought that they would feel best, coming from different backgrounds and experiences in Lake Stevens. So this commission in front of you today, I think, is one that you will be proud of. I'm certainly proud to serve on it. And I hope that we will be working side by side with you and getting things to you that make sense.
So Commissioner Morton, if I could, I'd like to directly address your comment and hopefully mitigate any feelings of displeasure if I can, being one of the few council members who was part of that decision. As the liaison, I see the work that you guys do. I know how hard you work, and it's very helpful for me to see those discussions and watch those discussions. I appreciate the perspectives you bring. I look at you very much as a cross section of our city, and I listen to that. For my own experience, my own decision-making process, what happened on that particular issue was I think you guys went through 5-6 meetings where step housing was on the agenda. Right before the last one, the day before, we had an election. You guys had your final meeting with step housing on the agenda. The votes got tallied, and I saw some very resounding and definitive themes emerge from that election. So as strong and as valuable a data point as you all provide me, an election involving thousands of people where there are very key asks that are heavily supported in the data. As a council member, I have to put those into my calculus as well. So the parts that were changed for me, that's what it was based on. It was taking that data in. For whatever it's worth, a lot of the discussion that you guys had focused on the boundary areas. I'll say at the beginning, I used to live in a large metropolitan area south of here. I watched them implement various types of housing policies around schools and parks. I saw what it did to those areas. I was very concerned about that. through watching your discussions, I actually came around and realized, hey, these boundaries don't need to be there. They're right. And so that part actually survived, that, as you forwarded it. And for me, that was because of your discussions. So for whatever that's worth, I heard you. I took what I could from it. I had some other data that I had to factor in, such large scale data that I couldn't ignore it. And for me, that's all that was. So your work is very much appreciated. I just wanted to make that clear on the record.
Thank you. As far as council, I'm going to just go through this really quickly and emphasize really the legislative power as it relates to this conversation. So council is the final approving body. They approve the ordinances and those land use policies, programs, et cetera. And they're looking at things like the budget, public safety and infrastructure, governance and administration, contracts and agreements. So that's a broad list of powers. And as already stated, the council has to take different metrics into consideration in their decision-making authority. So this is, in my mind, when this question was posed by the Planning Commission, I wanted to sort of talk about what happens if there is a disagreement or recommendations are not followed. And this might garner a little bit of discussion with the two boards. But so if there's a disagreement, what do you do? Well, and this is during your deliberation. You need to fall back on your procedures. You need to follow parliamentary procedures. You need to maintain civility and keep an open mind. That's what's really important in all of this public dialogue, is keeping an open mind to try to put yourself in the perspectives of the other people and really try to understand their positions. Where do the facts lead you? What does the data tell you, et cetera? Discourse is part of the process, and there won't always be consensus. A recommendation of the majority does move forward, but that doesn't mean, and hasn't happened in the past, that the opposing views can't be shared, like with the Supreme Court, when they have the minority opinion. Those also have value. If there's a minority opinion, why did we feel differently? And that's also considered. That's okay. The effect of the recommendations. So City Council, you're going to review the recommendations against the record, the findings, and establish decision criteria, just like the Planning Commission did. Deference should be given to the recommending body, and that could include staff, the hearing examiner, or Planning Commission. But the council is not obligated to follow that recommendation, and they may modify them. And as you heard Councilmember Donahue state, there are reasons that they think of things differently, and they're looking at a few other things. Council decisions, they may consider their own analysis, interpretation, the balance of competing interests, and that's really a big point for council. They're not looking at just an isolated duty like the Planning Commission has, as that list I just gave you has many more duties. So they're weighing this decision against this decision, especially if there's a budget impact, et cetera. And what does it do to the delivery of service? So I'll pause for a minute and see if there's any follow-up from the council or commission on sort of this analysis of disagreements or effect of decisions.
I have a question. If the Planning Commission comes with a recommendation and the council goes against that recommendation, is there an opportunity for that item to be brought back and rediscussed and have the council re-vote?
So I would say when you make a decision, and we don't always emphasize this point, you can approve, you can not approve, you can modify, or you can remand it back to the Planning Commission. So that's always an opportunity that if you don't have consensus as a city council, and there are specific elements in an ordinance that you can't come to agreement on, you don't like, it's definitely your prerogative. Send it back down to the lower board to rehash those issues and bring you something else that considers those. So the other way around, if council acts and takes a decision, there's really not going backwards without starting the entire process over unless there was a procedural error or something that can be corrected.
I guess I was just thinking about misconceptions or lack of actual information from the source that they might be considering. So my specific example is with the step housing. One of the recommendations was to not have it be a certain type. I think it was type 1 or 2 or A or C or something like that. But the council went against the recommendations, and I was there as a citizen during that. And I felt like there was a lot of misinformation that professionals in that arena would be able to clear up if they were brought and did a presentation or something like that. So I guess that's kind of where I'm basing off my questions, but it sounds like that is something we could do.
Yeah, and that's sort of going back to the planning commission is doing the heavy lifting in that case. And if there were experts brought in, that's usually going to happen with the planning commission if
them.
they're requesting that.
Yeah.
And then that information gets disseminated, distilled, if you will, when it goes to city council. And one thing we do is to provide the links to the planning commission packets, et cetera. So city council always has the same information to go back to. But again, it does get distilled down through those discussions to the city council.
Thank you.
I just would like to say just real quickly, Bruce, of course, I was part of that vote as well. Ryan stated very clearly why I also voted the way I did. At the end of the day, city council is held responsible for what they pass and how they pass it. 100% appreciate all the work you've done, the whole board. I was on the citizen subcommittee for the short-term rental policy. Exactly what you said. We worked hard. We came up with a policy. We recommended it to city council and they untied all of our shoes and took the laces out. You know, I don't think they kept any of it. So I know how that feels. Janice, as a citizen here in Lake Stevens and a mom and an owner of a small preschool, although at the time I was a mailman, I think, I was very outspoken at some of our zonings when it came to marijuana. And, you know, some of the stuff kind of went the way that I was hoping as far as limiting dispensaries and gardens and those types of things. But exactly what you said, when city council passes something, now your business is surrounded by what was allowed. And so, as you said, looking at the greater picture is huge. And at the end of the day, council is held responsible by the people who place us in these chairs. And as Ryan said, there was a loud pushback this last election, and I felt they made it clear that we needed to get more control of these things. And so, but I do empathize with both of you. I've been there as a citizen a couple of times.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for all of your attention as well. Going to hand it off to Christy now. She's just going to briefly go through our accomplishments and the work plan. And I'm going to hand out an updated version of our work plan. Christy gets to.
All right. Here you go, Russ. Thank you, Russ, and good evening, Planning Commission and City Council. So before you on the screen, Dave, you're in control there. Thank you. So taking a look back, what have we done in our department to comply with GMA, implement our comprehensive plan and our development regulations? Well, back in 2025, we passed through 3 zoning code amendments through the Planning Commission and City Council. That was for the traffic fees update, concurrency, along with the process code part 1. In addition, we updated our fee schedule. That was done towards the end of the year. Russ managed to wrap up with our legal department, the Everett Waterline ILA. That was a huge accomplishment that will allow us commercial development and a little more flexibility along our sub area along 20th. In addition, beautiful beautification measures went up around the city. As you look out here in front of the mill and on the Spur Road, you'll see the seasonal banners that those were recently put up, and those will be changed regularly. In addition, we're still up with our permits licensing that we've been working on. We're actually doing some updates with DOR right now to streamline our business licensing. We are up 7% from 2024 in our permits in general. We took a really hard crunch. We listened to our development community and we leaned out our permitting system, not just our online system, but in addition, all our forms, application process. I think if you come to the city now and apply for a permit, it's going to look a whole lot different and a lot less paperwork and a lot fewer uploads. So let us know. I'd appreciate any feedback if you do have that opportunity. We also conducted a lot of interdepartment and external training amongst departments in the city to help keep our staff up to legal snuff and up to date with all these legislative changes that have been through. And in addition, we had 2 major capital projects that we coordinated, the museum and the civic campus. Next slide. So what are we doing for 2026? We have a fairly consolidated work program. We're highlighting it here with just some of the key elements. And before you'll see on the sheet that Russ handed out, the revisions, they've been highlighted in yellow, but we will be coming back with you. Dave will be coming back with our 2026 comprehensive plan docket. That'll be coming quickly to you, I think, next month. In addition, we're looking at sub-area plan updates. We will be tackling the industrial plan as we talked about employment growth targets and wanting to meet those. So that will be forthcoming this year, along with critical area updates, street sidewalks, and parking minimums. Process code round 2, maybe even round 3 will be coming back, and same with housing. We're going to take a look at tweaking our housing development regulations to comply with some new state guidelines, and in addition, address lot splitting and a few other items. Then we'll be coordinating with parks on our park impact fee update. And with that, that is the conclusion of our presentation, and we're open to field any additional questions that you may have.
I have another question. Has Lake Stevens attempted or intend to use the CHIP funds that are available for affordable housing? Is that something that has been considered or looked at or anything like that?
We have not, to my knowledge, and I don't think that we've had the opportunity to.
Okay.
Just based on our limited affordable housing opportunities currently.
Yeah, okay.
Is the CHIP fund the one that helps to the infrastructure to the
Yes.
projects?
It is.
Yeah,
So that would be up to a developer if they were going to build that sort of housing.
Yeah, and there's benefit, pardon me.
Yeah, partner.
Right, and that's up to that developer of that property to decide they're going to build that type of housing.
Right.
And if they want to apply for, apply for that CHIP fund money to help out with the.
From what I understood is that 25% of the housing development must be affordable. And then the city would apply for the funds. So yeah, I see it's the developer's choice. I was just curious if that was something, I mean, we can, as a city, we can encourage that if that's something that we need, which affordable housing is definitely I think, something that people are asking for. But yeah, I was just curious if that was something that had been looked at or, if anybody's talked about it.
It's not something that any developers come and ask us to partner with.
And there are incentives for the developers too. So I'm just curious, with the lack of affordable housing here in Lake Stevens, if maybe we could make an effort to talk with the developers who are approaching us and encourage them to do that, because when we receive those CHIP funds, it allows us to make necessary improvements to the infrastructure where that development is being built. And that's less money that we have to take out of our funds to pay for those upgrades. So I just wanted to put that in people's ears.
Any other discussion? Bruce?
Well, just some final words. Well, everyone here in this room, we are in the middle of a huge tug of war. as Brian, you said, the voters have spoken very loudly. People generally don't want more people in this city. The roads, especially the trestle, is very clogged. Schools are very packed. And just even the roads within the city are getting very busy. And a lot of people moved to this area on the other side of the river, so that the kind of things that are going on in Everett and Seattle and such don't come on with that.
Yeah, it's a combination of that personality when he was in voice to the how or so maybe you know about like only the general how can how to be like if the long old just one already sells you there it's like
Yeah, Garrett ran and it's just working now.
what if no overlap and then part of the show that's can cost more data is there between further don't confirm
What we did begin to go from we find the essential different sources. Those things will be first.
Reports that it's truly long with one.
He had not astral in balance it. We not start today. I mean, like one of them is like you. It still fit me.
And we be in the